Hello, and welcome to Chad and Wess Ruin a Movie. If you'd like to contact us, you can reach us at chadandwess@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, you can always subscribe at iTunes and leave us a review, or follow us on SoundCloud. This week, we ruin Ant-Man.
Hey everyone,
Hey, it's Chad,
and this is Wes.
and we're going to take another stab at this. This is round 2 of Chad and Wes Ruin a Movie.
If you're wondering why he's talking about round 2, it's because we've been here before.
In fact, we were here for an hour and a half the night that we saw this movie being Ant-Man. The problem was there was some technical issues we didn't realize until the next day. So, we are going to re-record this.
Yeah, the fun thing about being first-time podcasters is that each time we do this, we run into something new that didn't happen the time before. So, luckily, we're learning each time we do this, and hopefully this one will go all right. And it's giving us another stab at this, and hopefully won't be an hour and a half. What we'll do is we'll kind of let you know what happened last time. You can compare it to what we do this time, and let us know which one you would prefer.
Yeah, initially we kind of had the idea of, let's go through this thing, and we started thinking about it, and we started writing down all the different scenes in it, and we literally went through the movie scene by scene, talked about every single detail in the movie, and oddly enough, ended up being an hour and a half long.
We almost inadvertently did a real-time commentary without actually being in front of the movie.
And as fun as that was, we both decided that we were initially expecting this to be maybe in the 20 to 30 minute range, and we would like to be much closer to that. So this time we're gonna pare it down and just really talk about the highlights and our main thoughts about it.
Pare it down. Why is the parrot down?
Because it's it's like one of those pigeons they take into the mines, the canaries.
Just like a pigeon.
And this podcast is already dead.
The thing was dead before we even got to the elevator.
Alrighty. So, anyway, needless to say, spoiler alert. This especially is the type of episode where we want to be very clear up front. This movie just came out. If you haven't seen it yet, what in the heck are you thinking? Get to the theater and see it. It was awesome. And don't listen to this before you see it, because it is going to definitely ruin a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie.
Yeah, there's not going to be any part of this podcast that doesn't go over in pretty specific detail what happens in the movie. So there's no safe place in this.
This is not a safe place.
We are not Walmart.
What? I don't know that reference.
You know, you can, like, they have those places that you can go to, and if, like, you're a lost kid or something, it's supposed to be, like, a safe place. They always have, like, if you've ever been into Walmart and you see, like, the sticker in the front door that says Code Adam, that means it's supposed to be, like, a safe place for kids to be able to go into and let somebody know, hey, I'm missing or I've been abducted or something, and they're supposed to do something about it. I don't know.
Wow.
The last time I abducted a kid, they didn't get away, so I was better at my job.
Oh, crap. The more you know. Anyway, all right. So, anyway, we've done our job of properly warning people that this will have spoilers in it. If you haven't seen the movie yet, go see the movie before you listen to this. We'll be here when you get back.
Yep. All right, here we go.
All right, so we're going to start with Act 1 of the story. Basically, we've broken down the plot into 3 acts, like it is normal for these kind of stories. And in Act 1, it starts off giving a little bit of background with a young Hank Pym. Hank Pym. There's an M there at the end, not an N. Being approached by the young, just-forming SHIELD for the Pym particles, the secret to his shrinking technology, and him being very adamant that he doesn't want them to have it. It then flashes to modern day, and Scott, the character played by Paul Rudd, Scott Lang, getting out of jail, and kind of a bit of a ceremony or a initiation thing for getting out of jail that they go through. Is a kind of a funny scene. It set the tone for the movie. It definitely showed his sense of humor. Over to basically the villain being introduced. So all of this initial stuff is very much, the whole first act is setting the stage, introducing characters, introducing kind of the major plot points. So the character Darren Cross, who ends up playing Yellow Jacket, is introduced. He kind of reveals the Yellow Jacket suit, and he has invited Michael Douglas or Hank Pym to see it, and it's kind of a he makes it seem like it's oh, this is to honor you, but then reveals it's like, hey, you tried to keep this technology from the world and from me, but now it's out there, and we're gonna make money off of it without you, even though you didn't want it to get out there. Then it goes back to Scott getting fired from his job. He's trying to make it straight. And this is kind of setting up what his motivation in the story is. He gets fired. He ends up going to see his family, and his daughter still loves him, but his ex-wife and her new boyfriend, who happens to be a cop, obviously are like, you can't be here, kicking him out. You can't be part of this family until you've started making it on your own, making money, and paying your child support. And this all kind of culminates into Scott deciding, well, to make any kind of money, people won't give me a chance. I'm going to have to get back into my life of crime. So agrees with his old cellmate and some of his cronies that, okay, I'll help you do this one job. And what is that job? Of course, they end up stealing the Ant-Man suit. And Scott, none of them know what it is. Scott ends up trying it on. And this results in him totally freaking out because he gets shrunk down to the size of an ant, doesn't know what's going on, finally deactivates the suit, and breaks back into the place they stole it from to return it to the previous owner. And that's when he gets caught. He gets caught when he's returning the suit, not when he stole it. So that's kind of the synopsis of Act 1, really quick. Now we're going to talk about it a little bit.
So a couple things kind of jumping right in here. It's just the general story idea already of them deciding to do a story with Scott Lang and not Hank Pym. Whenever they first kind of started talking about that, I thought it was really interesting that they went that route, just because Hank Pym is kind of the Ant-Man that most comic readers know, even though Scott Lang is kind of the current Ant-Man in the Marvel universe in the comics. Hank Pym's kind of the one that everybody knows, mainly just because he's the one that created Ultron in the comics and was married to Janet and had this big drama with her.
What was that drama again? Oh yeah, he beat her.
Oh yeah, too much drama. And so I thought it was really interesting that they went that route, and the way that they ended up kind of creating the story of, hey, he's been Ant-Man before. And just that whole concept of the fact that this is the first hero we've seen where there's been a previous incarnation of him. There wasn't a previous Iron Man, there wasn't a previous Captain America before all these origin stories. So automatically it made this origin story a lot different than what we've seen before, which I really appreciated because I didn't want really another just pure origin story.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they definitely gave nods to those old stories. So like Hank Pym was known for his temper and being a little bit mentally unstable. And you see that in his interactions with the old Shield. You see that with the way he reacts to things at Pym Technologies.
You mean when he slams that guy's head on the desk?
Yes, right. Yeah, I mean, just like beats the crap out of this guy, and who ends up being, one of the villains in this story. As far as the people in his generation, it's him and then kind of his protege, the guy that ends up being Yellow Jacket are the main villains in this. I also like one of my favorite lines in the movie, and I had to call you the other night to remember what it was, but the original introduction of Ant-Man was in Tales to Astonish, an old comic book, right? That was the name of it, and there was a line when Darren Cross was introducing and basically making a sales pitch to a bunch of guys, saying, like, oh, there was this rumor of a tiny man, doing this, that, and the other. It was this, it was that. It was Tales to Astonish. And, like, at that moment in the theater, you and I and our other friend who's a big comic book nerd all, like, chuckled and kind of looked at each other, and our wives are all kind of like, what?
And it was blatantly obvious, like in the entire theater, that it wasn't just the three of us in our group. It was like the three of us in the entire theater.
Yeah, which is weird because usually on like opening nights at the very first showing in this particular theater, there's usually quite a few more like nerds there. It was kind of strange that we were the only ones laughing, I thought.
Yeah, I thought that was funny too, and I don't know if the other people are different kind of nerds, which again you run the risk of kind of running into when you make a movie about Ant-Man, because you don't meet anybody out there that's an Ant-Man fan.
Yeah, I guess so.
You like the Avengers, and Ant-Man happens to be in the Avengers, but that's pretty much it. Like, there's not been a whole lot of Ant-Man comics, at least not ones that have done really well.
Right.
So it's
But he was like, as far as the origins of the Avengers, I mean, he came up with the name the Avengers in it. You know, he was part of the very first Avengers, and
Oh,
he's
yeah.
been around for a long time. So I mean, for people that are into the Avengers, if they were into it in the kind of looking it up and knowing the history of it type of thing, they would know about Ant-Man for sure.
Oh, yeah.
My mother-in-law knows about Ant-Man. She was into comics when she was a kid, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I used to love Ant-Man.
Huh.
He was so cool."
I didn't know that about your mother-in-law.
Yeah, I didn't know it until I started talking to her about how we were going to go see Ant-Man the other day, and she was really excited about it.
Huh, that's cool.
So I mean, it was just like I said, it was surprising to me that we were the only ones that kind of seemed to get some of those inside jokes
Yeah.
in the theater.
Yeah. The other thing that's kind of cool here at the beginning is you've got this prologue scene that kind of sets up automatically, like, why is Pym not working with Shield, which is in this Marvel universe, the cinematic universe, is kind of the question that pops into probably everybody's mind. Like, if you've got a good guy who's not working with Shield, there's got to be a reason for it, and so they wanted to kind of knock that out right out of the bat. And so you've got Peggy Carter and Howard Stark here at the beginning, which is really awesome because you've got Peggy from the TV show and from Captain America. Quick plug, if you have not watched Agent Carter, which I know you haven't, Chad.
I have not.
This is for you. You really need to go watch it. Like, it's only 10, 12 episodes, something like that. They're an hour apiece. But it's really, really cool. It's all a period thing. It happens right after Captain America, so it has a lot to do with the fallout from Captain America, the first Avenger, the first one. And, what that looks like, because she doesn't go straight from Captain America into, I'm going to go start S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, she goes back to kind of her job that she had, which was not a very active person. I mean, she was treated like a secretary because it's the 40s and women don't matter.
The good old days.
The good old days. Sorry, lady listeners, if you're out there.
Nah, there's no lady listeners to our podcast, most likely. No, but yeah, I've been interested in it. It's just I love movies and stuff like that, and I'll go make a special trip to go to the movies, but I don't watch that much TV of my own volition. So it's a show that I'm interested in. And I talked to my wife about it after you were so on board with it. I was like, yeah, maybe this would be a show that she would like.
Yeah, I told my wife too, 'cause she hasn't seen it either, and she normally likes that kind of stuff. It's like, we need to watch Agent Carter, and so I'm gonna go back and rewatch it and make her watch it at the same time.
You sit here and you watch this about empowered women.
Yeah.
You like it.
That'll teach you. But yeah, it's cool. So you've got her and you've got Howard Stark, who we haven't seen a whole lot of. This is John Slattery, the guy from Mad Men's playing him, and so he was back in Iron Man 2, so we haven't seen him in a while. And so I thought it was cool that they were bringing back a lot of these characters that maybe haven't seen in a movie, and so it's kind of like, hey, don't forget this is all part of the same universe, and so we're going to be bringing back these actors that you haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
But I just thought that was cool. That whole sequence was good. Anytime you can kind of tie that in, and so it sets up everything really cool. That's kind of my thoughts on the intro.
Yeah, and as far as the other scenes that kind of happen in this first part of the movie, I think that they quickly established the tone of the movie with the getting out of jail scene, with the humor, and kind of Paul Rudd's or Scott Lang's reaction to kind of this initiation rite of passage for getting out, where he, kind of gets to punch the big guy as hard as he can or whatever, and gets punched in by him as well, and just kind of his reaction to that. It set the tone, I think, for the movie really well.
Well, and I think the other thing it did, besides setting the tone and just being kind of a funny scene, it kind of set up the fact that, he's been in prison, but he was in prison because he did some computer stuff, not because, he's a violent person or anything like that. In fact, he even says, he's like, I don't really like violence that much. I try to stay away from it. So you kind of get an idea that he's been exposed to it a little bit, but he's not a violent person, which kind of makes sense when he gets into his training.
Well, and he also is like, I didn't rob the place, I burgled. He makes a point to be like, I'm a cat burglar. That means I did it stealthily to avoid conflict.
Yeah, I didn't threaten anyone.
Right.
Dude.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, just right after this is when he walks out of prison, and Michael Pena's character, Luis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that his name?
Luis.
Luis is picking him up, and holy shit, man! Like, this is probably one of the best characters in the movie, and probably one of the best played characters in the movie.
Oh yeah, Luis is like one of my favorite characters from the whole movie. And later on here in Act One, when basically Scott finally gets to the end of his rope and decides to go back to his quote life of crime to be able to make enough money to see his daughter, uh, the story that Luis tells Scott as far as like how he found out about this job and stuff like that is one of my favorite things in the movie. He does it twice. He does it here and he does it at the end of the movie. But basically, it's all in Michael Pena's voice. So all you can hear is Michael Pena's voice, but it goes and shows all the people he's saying or telling these, how he got this information about the job, and so their mouths are moving, and it sounds simple when I'm describing it, but it really worked comedically. It was hilarious.
Yeah, they use all these really quick cuts between each of them, and so, but it's just Michael Pena just kind of monologuing the entire time, which is funny when you've got this kind of scantily clad woman sitting on this big guy's lap talking to him, and then all of a sudden it's a big hairy guy talking, but it's the same voice the whole time.
Yeah, so that was a great scene. Then of course that you see some of Scott's genius and why he was such a good burglar when he goes in his scene of breaking into what ends up being Hank Pym's house to steal whatever's in this big safe that they heard about. And oh gosh, they get down there and they find out actually there's biometric security on the thing, and he has to improvise MacGyver style, which was a bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah, so the cool thing about this movie is like when you look at all the different Marvel movies out there, each one kind of fits into a different niche. There's you've got Thor, who's kind of the big fantasy plug. You've got Iron Man, who's the technology, movie. You've got Guardians of the Galaxy, which is your sci-fi thing. I mean, everything kind of fits into a different kind of genre. This is your heist movie, which they haven't really had, which is cool. So they're keeping it original, which again made the story a lot more interesting. And so it's cool that he's down there and he's trying to break into this place and he's going through all this stuff. But then you're right, of course, like just like any heist movie, he starts running into stuff that he didn't expect. Except with this, like, instead of just somehow pulling it out of his ass and like things happening, without necessarily him influencing it all, he goes into full MacGyver mode and starts finding all this crap around the house and whatever. I think it was a little more. I think this is one of those instances we were talking about earlier today, where it's a little bit of camp. Like they know what they're referencing. They know that they're referencing MacGyver and things like that, but they meant for it to be kind of tongue-in-cheek and kind of funny, like, oh, he just happened to find all this crap laying around that allowed him to bypass a fingerprint scanner.
Yeah, and not like your average on your Inspiron laptop fingerprint scanner that you think might be able to be fooled pretty easily. This thing was like a legit looking like, I don't know, like Shield type fingerprint scanner thing. Anyway. It was one of those moments in the movie where I had to, I'm going to just suspend my disbelief and just accept that he was able to trick this scanner.
Yeah. I did think it was kind of funny. They go from having a pretty high-tech fingerprint scanner to being this super old safe that is
from like 1930s.
Yeah, it's like super old. But it's funny just the kind of the flexibility he has to have and how to get past these saves. Like, it's not all about the technology, it's also about just being smart and understanding how this crap works.
And ultimately it was kind of an interview because, as we find out here at the beginning of the next act, this was set up for Scott by Hank to see if how he operated, how he could get in there, and then also to expose him to the suit, which he gets, and he takes back to his apartment, and curiosity gets the better of him. He tries it on, and we have that first, moment of seeing what happens when you turn into Ant-Man.
Yeah, this for me was kind of the big Honey, I Shrunk the Kids moment, because you've got this guy and all of a sudden he shrinks down, and so he's seeing the world, and you see it from his perspective. So you've got the plug for the tub, and it's ginormous. And I thought it was funny. One thing I noticed is that they actually had printed on it like the size of it, which was like 1.5 inches or something like that. And so he's standing right next to it, and he's super tiny, and so you can kind of get a feel for just exactly how small he is. And then you've got the classic scene, of course, where somebody comes in, and if he's in the tub, somebody's got to turn on the tub, and so
just so happens that Luis was feeling like taking a bath or something right
Yeah,
then.
during the middle of the day.
But
I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he was picking some things up and putting them down.
it's a quirk about their plumbing in that house. They have to turn on the tub every once in a while just to make sure keeps working.
Yeah. So I mean, that was funny, and it's cool. You get to see this pretty cool sequence where he goes from his tub to the apartment below him to another apartment below that, and almost gets sucked up by a vacuum, and then gets thrown out of a window. Like just kind of thing that one thing leads to another.
No, he did get sucked up by that vacuum.
Oh
Remember,
yeah,
he
that's
came
right.
out of the side of it.
That's right. Yeah, they he gets sucked up, and the Lego gets stuck in the filter or whatever, and so they stop it, and he gets shot out the side.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a cool sequence. The visual effects were all really good. I mean,
Oh yeah, I was really impressed with it.
yeah, you had to expect at least a good bit of visual effects. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to shrink someone down to the size of an ant, so that's not a practical effect.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, unless they want to.
Or make really, really giant versions of things.
That'd have been commitment right there. if J.J. Abrams would have been making this movie, he'd be like, "No, we got to build everything."
So that was a cool scene. Ends up returning the suit, and that's when he gets caught. We later find out why he got caught. Then.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about this whole beginning part, and this is just kind of a little more of a serious note, but I really appreciate the fact that he comes out of prison and he says, "Hey, I'm not committing any more crimes." I mean, immediately, like he just got in the van with Luis, and Luis is like, "Hey, man, I know this gig. Like, we need to go do it." And he's like, "No." He's like, "I've got to play it straight. Like, my family is the most important thing to me. I can't get sucked back into this. I did this original crime trying to do something good, and it backfired. I'm done with all that." And so he tries to do the right thing, and it's all about his daughter, and she's kind of the catalyst for all this. And I like this for two reasons. One, because it's a pretty good tie to the comics. He originally did a lot of this stuff and was involved in crime because of his daughter, and he wanted to provide for her, which is super admirable and is really awesome. And two, like somebody like having kids and things like that, it's cool to see like that's a little bit more of an emotional connection for me into the movie, and so I felt something there. I could empathize with him.
Yeah, I don't have kids. I don't care.
Yeah, you got a dog.
Yeah, man. If it was for his dog, I'd understand. No,
Not them stupid kids.
I get it, and I did appreciate that they really showed that he wasn't just a career criminal like out there to like just get right back into crime. He did make it go of trying to do it straight, and then it really was the his ex-wife slash her new guy who happens to be a cop that kind of forced him back into it because they're like, hey, you don't get to see her until you start paying your child support, and it's like, well, I can't hold down a job even at Baskin Robbins. Or
because Baskin Robbins always finds out.
Baskin Robbins always finds out. He couldn't even hold down a job there, and by his calculations, it was going to be years before he even got to see his daughter. And he's like, "That's not acceptable." He wanted to see her, so he, was forced into this almost.
Yeah, and it's also a little more realistic too. Like when you look at if he's supposedly going to be an Avenger, which it seems like it's probably going to happen. Like it's not as believable to have somebody who's like a hardcore criminal, he's doing all this stuff to be redeemed and then be accepted by all these other people. But if you've got somebody who committed a crime because he was doing something good and just got caught up by circumstance, and now he's Ant-Man, it's a little more believable than someone who's been a career criminal. I'll be like, yeah, I'll be good now.
Cool, man. All right, so now we'll get to Act 2, and I'll do a quicker synopsis this time. Basically, we have, Scott and Hank meeting each other for the first time, and kind of a discovery of their connection. We have a lot of training that happens with Scott by Hank. We also have kind of a first mission that they go on, or I should say a first mission that Ant-Man goes on, kind of in the suit, first time going out. We then have it was Darren Cross coming and confronting Hank Pym. And then it all kind of culminates with, okay, we're going to need a bigger team, and kind of a montage gathering of kind of all of Scott's guys. He's bringing them in, the guys that he did his original job with, and kind of, getting ready for that, the Act 3, the big kind of doing the job deal.
Yes, I mean, this is really just, it's a lot of montage stuff. Like, you get to see, they need him to jump through a keyhole, which is, cool. It seems there's a lot of practicality to how they get him to, try to train him and use his new powers.
Yeah, and, it's probably the coolest part to me is, when he's learning how to interact with the different types of ants. I think of Ant-Man, I think, okay, so it's a guy and he has ants. But there's actually different breeds of ants that he uses for different jobs that he does, which was kind of interesting. What I
It's a
wasn't
really
expecting
good
that.
science lesson.
Yeah, this is exactly how ants act.
Well, it is funny because at one point, Hope is going through and she's like, "This is the Ceralius cabalius," and it's like using all the scientific names for the ants. And at one point, like Scott's kind of mocking her, and he's like, "Go, blah, 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 blah," and he's like, "I can't remember the name of it." He's like, "Whatever you're called."
Yeah, right. And I mean, but it was cool. Like I appreciated it. And I just something I did not expect to really get out of the movie was all the different kinds of ants that he interacts with, and that they each kind of have a different purpose within his, what he does. It was a nice surprise. I mean, he's called Ant-Man. I should have expected that, but I
Oh,
didn't.
yeah. Well, it is one of the things I thought about it before the movie came out. Is like, how much are they going to touch on like the him talking to ants part, because it's definitely kind of the cheesiest part of being Ant-Man.
It's kind of like Aquaman.
Kind
Talks to fish.
Talks to fish. Yeah. Oh, God. We'll get there one day.
That'll be a fun podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a little goofy, like the whole him talking to ants thing. I was like, how are they going to do this? And I think they did it as best they could. They still kind of leaned into it a little bit. I was like, yeah, we'll get us a little bit goofy, but these ants are awesome.
Well, and I think for me, the biggest part of Act 2 was basically tying in the Avengers in his first mission. He initially thinks, and actually they all think, that he's going to attack an old PIM storage facility somewhere. And as he's, flying in on his flying ant and the clouds part, he discovers, oh wait, that's the Avengers logo on the top of this thing. And it's like, oh shoot, he's about to confront the Avengers.
Yeah, as soon as they were like, oh, you're gonna go to this place in upstate New York, like I feel like they almost turned to the screen to say it to us directly.
You know what we're talking about? Huh?
Yeah, as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah.
So,
I'm, of course, just sitting there totally clueless. I'm like, oh, cool, they're going to go infiltrate some facility. I have no idea until I see the logo. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's where they do the training. I saw that in another movie.
yeah, I had a little bit of a hope that maybe we would see more of the Avengers during this. I don't know where Scarlet Witch or Vision or anyone else was during this time. I mean, they're obviously not there because if Falcon's getting attacked on the outside, surely they're not just sitting around on the inside reading a book or something.
Yeah, they're off doing something, and also, they weren't there completely destroying Ant-Man because,
Oh, yeah.
any of the other Avengers would have been over in 2 seconds. Probably, although I still maintain that Falcon, had so much more training. It's tough to think about this guy who's not a violent guy being able to best him in a fight, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, and he also had the find anything goggles on his face.
Yeah, that's true. That was like, oh, I don't know what set off the alarm, but I'm here now and I'm going to stare at the ground because that's where the most likely place for me to find this thing is.
I'm sure it's a tiny sized person coming to steal from us.
Yeah, they couldn't have moved and like been hiding behind something or down on the ground. They're still on this roof for sure.
Yeah. But it's cool. They're fighting someone with these powers for the first time. I think it makes the most sense. Falcon's definitely kind of the most underpowered of all of them. I mean, it's not like Scarlet Witch who can just think a little bit and crush his brain or something.
Yeah, or Vision who like can
Just
manipulate gravity and laser beam him to death.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense why they picked Falcon, but also I think it's because Falcon's a little more of a not a goofy character, but it's got a little bit more of a sense of humor, and I think it's cool that they kind of get to meet each other. Probably the two guys in the universe who have the best sense of humor between each other, because I think this is going to play well, and we'll talk about some more stuff with the Falcon coming up.
Well, yeah, and both of them are themselves normal humans. They don't have like inherent powers within them. The other Avengers, at least right now in their current incarnation, there is no turning off their powers. They all have their powers all the time.
What about Iron Man?
He's not. Well, I mean, he's not an Avenger technically right now, right? He kind of. He left it behind. He's like, oh,
Uh,
good, we've replaced that was the gist at the end of the second Avengers
yeah.
movie.
It was well. We're not talking about the Avengers.
Okay,
Sorry.
fine. We digress. Anyway, but that was the big thing in this it's the rest of it's all montages and getting ready for Act 3, setting that up.
Yeah, you do get a good bit more of this conflict between Hank and Hope, which is fairly predictable. Like if we're gonna put this thing on the predictability scale, I mean it's pretty up there. Like if you don't see coming what the resolution is with her mom and like what really happened to her and stuff, then you just don't think very much.
Well, and there's two other things. They set up the whole what happened to Hank's wife. You actually, I guess it is during this part where they're doing the training before they actually go on the mission. You find out, she didn't die in a plane crash. She went subatomic.
She had to fit between the molecules.
Yeah, so, which was a bit of cheese, but I'm sure it has basis in the comics and stuff. But and you find that out in this, and that's kind of like a bit of healing that happens between Hank and Hope. In that scene where he finally reveals to her what happened there, and he blames himself, and she's like, "It's not your fault. She knew what she was doing."
Yeah, it was good. You get that kind of cathartic resolution there between the two of them, and it's again you kind of see it coming, but it all makes sense with the story and kind of pushes that along a little bit further.
You also blatantly see coming that there's going to be a romance between
Oh God,
Scott and Hope, which I maintain felt really forced. It didn't. I didn't feel the chemistry between the two characters. I saw it coming a mile away because they were clearly making it seem like they were going to have a love interest between the two of them, and I get probably from the comics it makes sense. It just in the story and maybe just with the actors, I didn't feel it.
yeah, I mean it's definitely not the focus of the movie. I mean when you compare it to let's say Iron Man, the Iron Man movies, you've got Tony and Pepper Potts, and the whole first movie, it's all about will they, won't they, and this kind of really cute back and forth type thing. Like nothing ever really serious happens, so they get to build this relationship, and plus you've got, I would say probably a different caliber of actors compared to what we have here.
But it's also not I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. I'm making out with you outside of a door.
Oh yeah, there was definitely some growth and some development to the relationship, as opposed to this one where it's constant hate and disdain the entire time, and then all of a sudden a little bit less, and all of a sudden making out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
then you've got the obligatory Paul Rudd with his shirt off. I mean, you could probably find a scene
abs.
like this. yeah. Listen, he worked hard for them. He wanted to make sure he got to show them off in the movie at some point.
Yeah. It seems like what you have to do as an actor who may not be known for their physique. If you go and do a superhero movie, you've got to get super cut, and at some point in the movie show, hey, look, I got super cut.
Yeah. It's it's happened to all of them. I don't know if it happened to Robert Downey Jr. I don't remember necessarily a scene where he's got his shirt off or anything. I mean, I don't normally make note of that type of thing.
Yes,
but
you do. You have a whole catalog of it.
I give you a time step of Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, my wife could too.
Yeah. So again, the whole romance thing, whatever. I mean, I can tell you right now where that's going, and it's gonna be that they're gonna end up together, and it's gonna be Ant-Man and Wasp again.
Sure.
And it's gonna echo what we've seen before, but I don't think it necessarily has to be that way. I think it would have been a little more fun for them to be, to tolerate each other, but maybe to still have this kind of playful, oh, I don't like you or I don't like you,
Yeah, work well together, work well playing off each other and stuff, but just relationally having a strained relationship outside of that could have been fine. And I don't mind there being a romance between them. I don't feel like they did a good job of developing that romance, and the chemistry between the actors wasn't there.
Yeah, I would have much rather seen them develop a romance over a couple of movies. Like maybe they get together in a future, Avengers movie or somebody else's movie, and they're working together, and they get to fight next to each other and do all this other kind of cool stuff.
Kind of like Black Widow and the Hulk.
Yeah, kind of like that actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind. I feel like I'm a lone voice. By the way, we're going back to Avengers. Sorry, briefly. I feel like I'm a lone voice amongst my friends of I I genuinely liked their romance and the kind of the way that their relationship has developed into like the latest Avengers movie, where they clearly like each other. And
Oh yeah,
I like that.
I liked it too, and they set it up really well in the going from the first Avengers movie to the second one. I mean, it's not something that just popped up all of a sudden. You got to see some growth there. You got to see this connection and then build this relationship. I mean, and it starts all the way back in that first scene with them together in that hut in whatever third world country that is. Joss Whedon's a genius. He knows how to write really good stuff like that. Yeah, but again, when you compare things like that exist in this universe to this, it doesn't hold up very well. And so
yeah, they could have taken their time on this, unless they're like, nope, we're putting Ant-Man in one more movie and he's dead. But
yeah,
we don't know. Anyway, so I feel like that kind of hits all the major points for me for Act 2.
yeah, I'm good.
All right, so on to Act 3. This is kind of, obviously the climax of the movie. This is what they've all been preparing for throughout Act 2. This is essentially the heist in PIM Technologies, I think is the name of the deal. It's, they initially infiltrate and get in. There's complications thrown in. It's revealed that Hydra is involved, like always. You have basically the bad guy, Darren Cross, who has yet to embody Yellow Jacket escape, takes a helicopter, and of course Scott runs after him. They fight. There's a break in the action. Then they continue the fight back at Scott's family's place, of course. There's kind of all that drama going on in the fight, and then after the fight's over, the Scott and Hope get together. There's kind of resolution within that area. There's resolution between Scott and his family, and kind of they leave you with a cliffhanger of Scott kind of, it seems like, getting the call by the Avengers. We don't know if it's to join the Avengers or if they're gonna just come and get him or something, but it's you kind of get that at the very end of the movie.
Well, I don't think it's so much the Avengers are wanting to come in. I think it's Sam Wilson is looking for him because he got his ass kicked by somebody who was not an Avenger, and now he's pissed off about it and wants to go find him.
Sure. Yeah, and that's actually a funny part we didn't mention about the scene earlier where they had their fight was his kind of very last comment. I almost wanted to call him Hawkeye.
Different bird.
Falcon. His kind of last comment was, do not tell Captain about this. But yeah, so that's kind of the way it wraps up. They this is the heist finally happens. There's complication, big fight scenes, and Ant-Man wins the day.
Yeah, so this is one of those movies where it's super enjoyable to watch. I mean, it's a great movie and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of humor kind of sprinkled throughout, like basically throughout the whole thing. That was another thing that I felt like made this a little more different than some of the other Marvel movies. Is the only other movie that I can think of that was kind of meant to be, I guess, like a humorous movie was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Sure.
But even this is, a different type of humor, a little more grounded, and so it's definitely one of those things that it just kind of helps move everything along throughout the entire movie. And so even here during like the fight scenes and things like that, like it's still, people are getting shot, but you're still laughing every once in a while.
No, it's hilarious when you get shot. The initial, like, while they're before the complications happen during the heist, once again you got to see all the ants doing their different jobs and kind of how he was utilizing them, how he actually utilized the PIM particles to shrink down the bombs that he ended up using onto the ants, and they launch off the back of the ant, and like while it's on its way to its target, it boop zips back up to normal size and attaches to the side. That was like some cool scenes, like when he took down the server farm inside there, all the ants that had the electrode whatever's on their back, and fried all the servers. That was kind of cool.
You know what one of my favorite sequences was in this whole thing?
No, but you're about to tell me.
No, I'm never going to tell you.
Okay,
actually.
no, well, it'll be a mystery forever.
No, when Yellow Jacket takes his miniaturized suit and enlarges it and puts it on within inside of like 3 seconds.
Oh my gosh! So that happens twice in the movie. I forgot to mention it, but like when he's getting out of jail and the ants bring in the suit and miniature form, it zooms up to big size. he has literally 10 seconds, and he spends the first 5 seconds of that freaking out and not doing anything. So within 5 seconds, he gets the Ant-Man suit on and is shrunk down. This happens again with the Yellow Jacket. As you just mentioned, Darren Cross has like 3 seconds when Scott gets knocked out of the plane or out of the helicopter, and boom, he's knocked out. He comes back in, and guess who's already fully in suit that happened to be in his briefcase, shrunk down. He's gotten it out, big sized it, supersized it,
Super size.
and put it on. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's maybe that's a hidden superpower we didn't know about him.
Yeah, he actually only has one superpower. It's putting on a suit really fast.
Yeah. And I guess kind of going along with that, they never said that he's actually used the suit before. So if that's true, then he's going up against someone who has now been training for probably
knows how long,
at least
yeah.
a week,
Yeah.
and has done a mission and faced off against an Avenger, and is still like holding his own with it. Like,
Yeah, like they allude to that he's been exposed to the PIM particles, and that's causing him to start to go insane. And that's from the comics. You know, there is a background for that, but you know they kind of just throw it in there nonchalantly. So when has he been exposed to them? Because up until this point, they haven't been able to shrink a living being down, and so they've gone from finally successfully shrinking a sheep down to him in the suit himself and knowing how to use it really well. And the only justification I can see for this is, they have had the suit for a while and it wasn't shrunken down, and he maybe did some training in it, but why would he do that? Why would he himself do training inside the Yellow Jacket suit? Maybe he tried it on and tried it a couple times, but he's running this company. He's trying to come up with these innovations. He's obsessed with the science of how to shrink down a living being. When did he have the time to go and take this suit out for a spin and even just learn how to use it, let alone how to handle the shrinking and getting big thing that was obviously hard for Scott to get a hold of?
yeah, he masters that. He masters flight. He masters his laser beams coming out of his whatever the crap that was coming out of his back. All this stuff, and
Doc Ock.
yeah, we haven't seen this somewhere before. And meanwhile, with Scott, like they're trying to teach him how to punch, and this was actually something that I thought was really cool, as they talked about the variations between him punching and what the repercussions of that could be. Like, hey, with the proportional strength and size that you have, like if you punch too hard, you could kill someone because you're like a bullet. And so they kind of extrapolate on that theme a little bit more and that idea.
So there's and this was like something that I was trying to ignore, but there's some inconsistencies there. It seems like, sometimes they make it seem like, oh no, you still have the mass of yourself at full size, but you're on tiny scale. So like, he falls out of the tub and he breaks the tile when he kind of lands on it. Okay, so you've got this big mass, but then like a minute later, he gets sucked up by the vacuum cleaner. Well, if you have the mass of a human being, that vacuum cleaner would not be able to pick you up.
Yeah.
And so there was just some things in there where they played fast and loose with physics that, in comic book movies I try to ignore it. If it was a movie that was trying to be based in reality in our universe, then I would maybe have more issue with it. But there's times when it seemed like, oh yeah, no, these are the rules. But oh wait, not when they're doing this thing over here. But
yeah, not when it's convenient.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, all this is pretty cool sequence. There's some really funny stuff through here again, like when they're in the house and they're fighting. Again, kind of one of the problems I had with this movie, which again I will say this is an awesome movie. I loved it. I will see it again, but it's got problems just like everything else. One of the ones is the fact that, and this is kind of more of a Hollywood problem more than an Ant-Man problem, is the fact that if you see the trailer, there are many scenes in here that are really cool scenes, but get ruined for you. Specifically, the train fight inside the little girl's room.
Yep.
It could have been a really funny thing that's happening. You don't expect them to be fighting, on a Thomas the Tank Engine. You're used to seeing the Avengers fight on this city that's plummeting to Earth and about to explode, and Ultron's flying around, and then you immediately in the very next movie go to this where they're fighting on a toy train. It's pretty funny and it's really really clever, but we already saw the whole thing in the trailer.
Yeah.
Again.
They like usual have ruined the opportunity to give the audience in the theater a special moment of revelation. Like, oh wow, he's on the train track. He's kind of scared because the train's coming at him. But then, oh yeah, it hits him and it falls over. And that moment was ruined because it happened in the trailer.
Yeah.
I will say though, they had another scene like that before the train scene that I thought was really cool when Scott or Ant-Man was running through the model of a building,
Yeah.
the new building that they were going to be building. How many times did I say building?
Building.
He's running through that, and the security guards are shooting pistols at him. And of course, on his sides, they're like mortars, and they're blowing up this scale model, of a town. And that was a cool moment. It was like, oh, hey, he almost looks like he's in a normal Avengers movie, because there's mass destruction going on, but really it's on a really tiny scale. That was a fun moment that you didn't know was coming.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was funny is, after the fight happens, they throw the Thomas the Tank Engine out the window, and he's got the little discs that either shrink things or make them larger, and he throws one and, hits Thomas the Tank Engine. So all of a sudden, Thomas the Tank Engine comes busting out of the side of this house, and you've got all these police and firefighters and EMTs and the family and stuff outside. It's like, oh my God, there's a freaking train.
Yeah, that and the ant accidentally makes gigantic comes out, and they're all freaking out about that. Those were definitely some fun moments in that fight. Of course, we have the revelation. We should all be shocked that Hydra's involved.
Yeah.
The villain in everything.
Yeah, it's just they find a way to tie them in again, and it's just it's one of those things like there are other criminal organizations in this universe. There are other just individual bad guys that they could be using.
Yeah, not everybody has to be tied into the big overarching criminal organization. It could just be an individual bad guy.
Yeah, and I understand like not everything can be orchestrated by Thanos. Like in this movie, it's not a Thanos movie, but like there's still some other things they can explore. Like there's other ways to tie it in without it always having to be Hydra. I will say it makes sense the way that they do use it, and it's kind of you're seeing a lot of these remnants from Winter Soldier that are kind of all over the place, which makes a lot of sense. But it's it's very convenient how Hydra keeps showing up.
Right, and of course, what is the ultimate solution that he came up with? How to defeat Yellow Jacket?
The bug zapper?
No, he remember he had to.
Oh yeah, he's got to go between the molecules.
He went subatomic. The thing that killed the original Wasp.
Yeah.
He's sacrificing himself.
Again, you see it coming a mile. Like if you make it more than 30 minutes into this movie and you don't see this outcome happening, then you should leave.
Thanks for insulting our listeners.
I don't want them as my listeners if they can't figure that one out.
You stop listening to our podcast right now.
I do not give you permission to listen to me.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting though because the guy with what was he, an electrical engineering degree?
He had a master's in electrical engineering.
Master's in electrical engineering somehow figures out in a very brief amount of time how to get out of the subatomic realm or whatever they called it. I can't remember what it was, but
the microverse.
The microverse. Well, they didn't call it that, but basically this thing that Hank Pym knows a whole lot about, but also knows nothing about throughout the movie. There's times when he sounds like he's an authority, and there's times when he sounds like I haven't been able to figure anything out about this.
Yeah. It's like it is definitely this way, and I just kept waiting for somebody to go, "Oh, you've been there," and he'd be like, "Oh no, why would I have been there?"
Yeah. So, but he's been spending all this time. He lost the love of his life to it, and somehow Scott gets sucked into it, and he thinks, "Oh, I'm gonna put the Enlargo disc inside my regulator, and it's gonna make me big." Hey, you know what? It worked, but it was just that once again was like, okay, we know he's gonna get out of this. They're not gonna kill him off in this movie.
And so, did he just disable the shrinking part of his stabilizer, but the getting big part, like it's still gonna stop him from becoming a giant or a Goliath?
Oh, that'll be. Well, we'll talk about that after we're done talking about the movie. But the potentials for the future. But yeah, it was it was fun. He goes in. He thinks he's basically sacrificing himself for his family once again because Yellow Jacket was threatening his family. Takes him out. Ends up being able to come back. All is forgiven by the cop new boyfriend of his ex-wife. He tells him, "Hey, there's a hole in the ceiling. That's your way out."
Yeah.
Gets him escape. Ends up, washing his record, being like, "Oh no, we filed all the paperwork. You were released properly." He covers his tracks and things like that.
Yeah.
There's healing in his family, which was cool.
But you know what? It would have been very easy for them to not mention that whole thing about him being broken out of prison, and for them to like forget to fill in that plot hole. Because I mean, how many other things do we see where they forget about that kind of stuff, and then you're like, wait a minute, he's wanted by the police. This is a wanted man. He needs to be in prison. Like, kudos to them for at least making sure they filled in these kind of holes as they went along.
Yeah, and it was a chance for them to show that someone who had been very antagonistic towards him, the cop boyfriend of his ex-wife, showing that he's like, hey, you know what, you're a good guy, and he's going to be able to have a relationship with his family again, which is the kind of, as far as the human story they're telling, was a good moment.
Yeah, everyone can have redemption. So yeah, I mean that kind of sums up that. So now we've got the post-credit scenes.
Well, but actually, we haven't talked at all about the romantic kiss.
I was hoping you would forget and we could just skip over it. Yeah, so he goes back to... So the fight all ends up, and he goes back to Hank's house, which... And again, Hank is such an authority on the microverse, but then, like, here he's, like, asking him all these questions.
Yeah.
Like, oh, tell me about it. You were there. Am I right? Am I guessing correctly?
But he was like, I can't really remember anything, which is an interesting thing. He goes in there and he can't... Like, I mean, I wonder if he's going to remember that stuff eventually, or if it's just going to be like the only people that know about that is the audience, and we'll never know anything about the
our
microverse.
special time,
right?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. The whole amnesia, like, oh, I don't remember anything from the microverse type thing. Like, you don't remember enlarging yourself.
A little blue pill. Oh, it was a blue.
It
disc.
was blue.
Oh,
there you go.
Viagra. Product placement.
Well, Chad's familiar with this product, seems to be. I've never heard of it before.
Oh, yeah, totally. All the times. By myself. Anyway, but then at the very end, we have the second instance of Luis's telling of a story about how, he found out about, this thing, and it ends up being, this is the time where we see Stan Lee do his cameo, and we hear Michael Pena's voice coming out of Stanley's mouth, which was hilarious.
Yeah. Stanley's lips are moving, but somebody else's voice is coming out.
And it's more than just the fact that it was his voice. It was the slang, and it was the way he was speaking. It was, and also the comedic fact that he always starts off his stories in a place you wouldn't expect to see his character. Yeah, having opinions you wouldn't expect his character to have.
Yeah, he's dressed like a thug the whole movie. He's, a career criminal. But both of his stories begin with, well, I was at this wine tasting with my cousin, and then this one was, well, I was at this art gallery opening. It's just like, wait a minute, what? Like, I kept waiting for someone else to react to this stuff, and the funny thing is, Paul Rudd, the only reaction he really gives to it is like, this isn't important, skip this stuff.
Yeah, wrong details.
yeah, wrong details, skip to the important stuff. But it's because, like, nobody mentions the wine tasting, nobody mentions the art gallery, like, they just, other than just, like, all these are the wrong details, but, like, nobody questions his character in that.
Right. Anyway, that that was a fun moment, and then you kind of see, okay, there's going to be an eventual tie-in. Obviously, I mean, we know this because he's cast in the next, what is it, Captain America movie?
Yeah, Captain America: Civil War. Paul Rudd is part of the cast,
so we know he's going to be in there. But this is obviously, at least for the people that don't get into the stuff that's announced and the things that happen at Comic-Con and stuff. Yeah. This is a chance for the audience, just the general audience goer, to know, oh, he's gonna be involved with stuff with the Avengers.
Yeah, and so the two post-credit scene here. We've got the first one that's kind of just right in the middle. We've got Hank taking Hope down into the basement to another secret room, which this is a giant basement. Can I just say that? I mean, they've been training down there. They were fighting. He's got his secret room with all the monitors. He's got the safe. He's now got this other room, which we're getting ready to talk about. Like, his basement is underneath 6 houses.
Right. Yeah. And they reveal, of course, that she is going to be the Wasp at some point in this universe. We don't. Do we know yet what movie she's going to be in?
No, I was looking at something. I think it was yesterday, and they were talking a little bit about it, and they said it's going to be a little while. Like it's going to be a big reveal when it happens. So I wouldn't expect it to happen like in Civil War. And they even make a point in the scene to kind of say, well, it's not ready yet. It's a prototype. I need you to help me finish it. So I mean, they're
Yeah.
gonna have to work on it for a little while. Really cool looking costume. I like how that they showed the original Wasp. Like there was that scene for the flashback where it shows like what happened to her, and it's basically it looks just like the Ant-Man costume except it has wings on it.
Right.
I like that this one is a little more unique. It's a little different, so that way it's not just the pairing of the two.
I did have a moment when they showed the flashback and they showed the Wasp. I was like, oh, it looks exactly like his suit. That's kind of a letdown, But I'm imagining if Ant-Man joins the Avengers, that there's a chance Tony Stark is going to amp up his suit a little bit and
Oh,
give
yeah.
it an overhaul. And the next time we see Ant-Man, maybe he'll have a cooler looking suit. I was satisfied with his suit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it could be it over time. At least with Hank Pym's Ant-Man, not only did he change his moniker, but he also had lots of different suits and different looks to his suits.
Yeah, and I mean with this, I think it makes complete sense that they'll end up upgrading the suit eventually because the suit is from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Like that technology has grown, and they even show it at one point. Scott's kind of tinkering with it in a couple of times in one of the montages, so you can tell he's already got some ideas about what he wants to do. And I guarantee you that point at which he puts the get bigger disc inside of his belt, like that's I think a hint of things to come. I don't think that he will be shrinking forever.
That's why you get into the microverse. You shrink forever.
Yeah.
And then we have, of course, that was the mid-credit scene. We have the after-credit scene, which you were saying you think is an actual clip from Civil War.
Yeah, I think this is a clip from the movie because there's not a couple things. One, there's not enough dialogue to really set up the scene to let you kind of figure out what's going on. So if you compare this to the scene from Winter Soldier, there was a definite beginning and end to the scene where you were able to see what was going on because it was setting up the twins for the Avengers. When you look at this one, it's like you're coming into kind of the middle of it. So you've got some guy chained to a bench or something, and Sam Wilson and Cap come in, and and you find out that it's Bucky, it's the Winter Soldier there, and they're talking about something that has obviously already happened, and they need to get some help, but Tony can't help because they won't let him, that whole thing, and so it's just there's too much.
I know a guy.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I know a guy, and so it's cool I think to kind of see. Now a little bit of how Ant-Man's going to play into Civil War, which is cool. But I just thought there's too much kind of assumed exposition up until that point where it wouldn't be able to exist by itself. I think it's a scene from the movie. Who knows? We'll find out.
I'm going to disagree with you just to be contrary.
No, that's good.
Based on nothing at all. But yeah, no, it was a cool scene, definitely to see kind of his story is going to continue, and we already knew that he was going to be in Civil War, but it definitely lets the people that aren't as once again clued into what goes on outside of just in the theater, to see he's going to be involved somehow with Captain America, and lets them kind of have that heads up.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, and I'm curious if where he falls on the the fence with this, because if you've not read Civil War from the comics, basically the whole gist is the government wants to register all the superheroes, wants to train them properly, and wants them to be agents for the government. Not a bad idea. I mean, there are things that have happened that cause them to have those thoughts. But ultimately, it comes down to Tony and Steve coming up against one another and saying, I don't agree with this. So it's funny, you've got Captain America, who should be the company man, who's, a product of World War II and all this stuff, who is coming down the other side of the fence and saying, no, this isn't right. I remember the last time somebody wanted everyone to register, and a genocide happened.
Right, yeah, but he's coming down on the side of quote-unquote freedom.
Yeah.
And then Tony, it's interesting because in one of his previous movies, the government was trying to take his suit away, and he was fighting for his freedom. And now if he's going to be coming down on the side of the government saying, oh, no, the supers need to register
Yeah.
and stuff like that. He seems to have also kind of taken a bit of a flip flop here. So it'll be interesting to see how they tell the story in the movies.
Yeah.
And how they play all that out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, I think, also to see where Ant-Man falls in this. Like, I think if he's going to be with Falcon, then he's probably going to be on Cap's side. But what does that look like? How do they recruit him for the cause? And
And he kind of seems like an anti-establishment type character.
Yeah.
His crimes were
really, the criminal is an anti-establishment guy. I never would have guessed.
well, but once again, he's only a criminal because he was working for a company and found out that they were doing some bad stuff. When he blew the whistle, he got fired. So he hacked back in to expose them. He did expose them, but in the same process, he was doing something illegal, so he went to prison.
Yeah.
So he was fighting the establishment. He had let's say righteous goals or righteous motivations behind it, but he was still doing something illegal.
Yeah. So talking a little bit more about the tie-in to the the greater Marvel universe. There are two things that I thought about. One was the fact that this is the first movie where we get an honest to God mention of Spider-Man.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So in the last quick montage scene with Luis telling this story about Sam Wilson looking for this guy, he's sitting on this park bench. Sam Wilson, the Falcon, is, and he's talking to this girl, and he says, "Hey, I'm looking for a guy," and she's like, "What?" She's like, "Well, we've got a guy that jumps, a guy that swings, a guy that climbs up walls. What kind of guy are you looking for?" Like it's the first little drop in the hat there, and I got a little excited.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because all three of those could be descriptors of Spider-Man. Obviously, swings and climbs up walls are more, but I mean, he also can jump really, well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I wonder if that is actually three different things that they're alluding to, or if all of them are a description of Spider-Man.
One could be Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
The jumping or the swinging and things like that. I mean, he's supposedly in some type of jungle city thing. I mean, we got to see Wakanda in Age of Ultron, but there's jungles around there and that kind of stuff. So
did we get to see? That's a controversy I've seen online talking about. Did we actually see Wakanda, or did we see another place in the vicinity of Wakanda, a city in Africa somewhere or something like that? But have we actually seen Wakanda? Because it's supposed to have advanced technology.
Yeah.
At least from the comic book origins, and the city we saw did not.
Right. I bet you money that was Wakanda.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy way for them to incorporate Black Panther and to bring him in, which will be in Civil War. It's funny, he doesn't have his own movie coming for another few years, but he's going to make his appearance in Civil War, and supposedly so is Spider-Man.
Right.
It seems like Black Panther will probably play a bigger role because he's been around and cast for a while, and I'm guessing had a lot of stuff written for him in the movie, with Spider-Man being a fairly recent addition. But it was interesting. I wondered if...
They're just going to add him CG in the background swinging in a couple scenes, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at this point, whatever it takes. We're going to have a Spider-Man, and he's going to be an Avenger, and it's just this is every kid's dream. Think about when you're a kid and you're reading this stuff and the old movies that you've seen. Would you ever have thought that we'd be at this point that we're at right now?
I want the complete healing of the Marvel universe to happen. X-Men is still outside of still outside of it. I want to see Wolverine in there. I want to see the entire universe come in, and there's hope. Because Spider-Man came in.
Yeah.
This is a step in the right direction. I am hopeful that there are two characters that was in the second Avengers that are technically more known as X-Men.
Yeah.
Universe stuff. You can't call them this. You can't refer to mutants. But hey, you know what? It was a step in the right direction. So every time one of these things happen, I get more hopeful that we're going to see the entire Marvel universe come together in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and actually get to enjoy the scope that there is within the comics.
Yeah. Well, listen, all it's going to take is, after this Spider-Man deal finishes up, is Sony going over to Fox and saying, "Hey, man, you want some of that Disney money?" I mean, because Disney does not have a lack of money. It would not take a whole lot, I don't think, for them to be like, Sure, we'll put Fantastic Four in a movie. We'll put X-Men in a movie. All you got to do is just agree to, let us be a little bit more in control creatively with this kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
you can put your banner on it. You can put 20th Century Fox on it. That's not a problem. We don't have a problem with that. Like, let us incorporate all of our characters. Let them all be together.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah.
With all of that. You had mentioned. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of wrap up and final thoughts and what you.
You had mentioned some stuff about their previous attempts at doing an Ant-Man story
Yeah.
cinematically.
Yeah, and that actually ties in a little bit to some of my final thoughts. So, just because I've said it before, I'll say it again. Overwhelmingly, a very, very positive movie. Like, it's up there for me. I know one of the guys we went to see it with said it's now one of his favorites from the franchise. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I haven't had enough time to kind of process it and think about where it's going to fall in my rankings as far as the movies goes. So I'll spend a lot of time thinking about it. But one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised about was the fact that this movie's been in development for over a decade. Actually, over 2 decades, technically, because back in the 80s, Stan Lee kind of pitched it. But Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was it being in development, so they didn't want to kind of compete against them. And then in the early 2000s, it came around, and there was a different director attached to it. Edgar Wright worked on it, and they gave him a credit there at the end because a lot of the stuff he did stuck around. So, I don't know necessarily what happened that made him leave. I have a guess. Would you like to hear my guess, Chad?
Sure.
You're just saying that. You don't care about
No,
me.
you're right. I don't.
I know you don't, but I'm going to tell you anyways because I don't care. So when he came on, that was before Iron Man and before any of this other stuff had
It was
happened.
more of a risk.
Yeah, more of a risk, and also like it's probably a little more free for him. However, now we're at this point. We're at the end of phase 2, getting ready to go in this third phase, and however many years it's been for these Marvel movies. And now there are certain expectations with, hey, this has to be part of this universe. There are certain things like you have to do. We're going to put an Avenger in this movie. Like, you've got to have this stuff happen. And so I don't know if
He didn't feel the creative freedom he wanted.
yeah, because like I said, it's very different. Like, this movie and the focus of it, I'm sure, has shifted a lot from the time it began being in development to now. It's like, hey, you can still tell your story, but you're going to have to do the stuff that the studio wants you to do too. Like, you've got to have your studio guys involved with this, or else they've got to have that buy-in, or else it's not going to work.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. But the fact that, like, they went through all that and they changed directors pretty late in the game, like, I didn't know what that would look like, and they did script rewrites, and they brought in Adam McKay to do all this kind of stuff, who's done all these comedies. Like, it was a lot of risky stuff, and it didn't look good for a while, but it's turned out so well. Like again, it's Marvel has that uncanny ability to take these unpopular properties like Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy and make $1 million franchises. I mean, there's no telling how much money they've made off of these. God, has it been like 12 movies so far? I've lost count at this point.
Yeah, there's that, and I'm always excited for a comic book movie to come out. Like, it doesn't really matter if it's DC or if it's Marvel. I'm gonna go out and watch it. But I've really enjoyed how they've been able to take and just can make a lot of consistency and span this universe. I remember when I think it was in one of the early Iron Man movies, right? Like, it was before Avengers came out. They showed Tony Stark some information about something going on, and you see clips from one of the Hulk movies or something like that playing in the background. And when you saw that, I was like, hey, wait, that's from the other movie. And they were actually tying these movies together. It was like the first time you really saw that happening, and I was like, okay, this is really cool. And now it's in every single movie. There's tie-ins between it and like 2 or 3 other films that have already been out or that are coming out, stuff like that. And for me, it's really a satisfying thing to see that overarching story happening between all of these. And then you can even go to things like the TV shows and things like the Netflix series and stuff like that. Just all of this stuff getting tied together is really satisfying.
Yeah, and it's making logical sense in the movies and kind of tying into the story where there's this growing presence of superheroes in the Avengers in these movies. When you start off, it's just Tony Stark and it's just about Iron Man. And there's these references to him, and then the more they start to tie in, then there's more of references to other individual characters. after the Avengers, the first one, everyone's still kind of doing their own thing, but there's these little drops, in the bucket about it. And then all of a sudden, there's the second Avengers, and like this presence has grown. Like they're a formal group. Shield is calling them for help. All this kind of stuff has happened, and now you're in Ant-Man, where they have their own training facility. And he even mentions at one point in the movie, he's like, "Why aren't we calling the Avengers? Like, we need to get them in here." So I mean, they're a known presence in the world, and makes so much sense. Like when you look at like what the next movie is going to be about, it makes so much sense. The Marvel's just doing a freaking awesome job of like lining all this stuff up so well.
Cool. Well, I think that about wraps it up as far as this is all concerned. I hopefully we didn't have the audio and technical difficulties by the end here that we did last time. We'll be posting this soon, and we definitely invite comments, feedback, how you liked this format that we used. If there's anything that things you'd like to see out of the kind of Chad and Wes ruin of movies in the future, as far as when we kind of go to a brand new movie that's come out and kind of come and talk about it.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on this too. Are there things that we said that you agreed with, that you didn't agree with? I mean, definitely drop us a line in the comments. We'd be happy to chat about it and maybe feature it in an upcoming episode.
Sounds good.
Have a good night, everybody.
We'll see you. Thanks for listening to Chad and Wes Ruin a Movie. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave us a review. You can also follow us on SoundCloud. You can contact us at chadandwes@gmail.com. See you next time.
This has been a production of Chad and Wes Mega Podcast.